Hi, I'm Caitlin from Stitched Up, and today we're going to learn how to put pockets into side seams, a great way to make your favourite items a bit more practical. So for this tutorial, you'll need a piece of paper, a pencil, a ruler, a chalk pencil, some pins, an unpicker, some thread, some paper scissors, some fabric scissors, some material for your pocket bag. A scrap of about 50 by 50 centimetres will do for this. You want it to be of the same weight or lighter weight than the item that you're working on, just so it's not too heavy under the fabric. Then you'll need the item to work on, an iron and a sewing machine. So to start off, we're going to draw our pocket bag pattern piece. So get your paper and your ruler, and then place your hand over top. You want to make sure that there's enough room for your hand, and then also some extra room for seam allowance and just for give to make it comfortable. So looking at my hand here, I'm going to estimate about 18 centimetres. That looks like a good width for me. And then draw this line here, which will be the entrance to my pocket. Then for the rest of the pocket bag, we're going to do freehand. So you want to come out straight a bit for both of them, and then just draw around your hand with some extra space. So your final shape will look a little bit like that. And then we're going to draw a line parallel to our entrance. And this here will be your grain line. Then we can label this pattern piece and cut it out. So here we have the finished cut out pocket bag pattern piece. So next up, we're going to cut out our pattern piece. So I've laid out my pocket bag fabric. I folded it over so there's just enough room for my pocket bag to lie on top, so I'm not wasting any fabric that I don't need to. And then I can just measure it so that my grain line's at equal distance from the edge. And then I'm just going to trace around it with a pencil. If I was using a darker fabric, then I could use my chalk pencil, or if I didn't have one, I could just pin all the way around and cut it out like that. So when I take my pattern piece off, I can see the outline to cut around with my fabric scissors. And you want to be careful not to shift the fabric too much whilst you're doing this. So now I have two identical pieces to make one of my pocket bags for one side. So I just need to repeat the process again so that I've got a pocket bag for each side. So now I have all my pattern pieces cut out, and I'm just going to put X's on the inside so that I can remember which sides are the wrong sides of the fabric, because this will be important later. If your fabric has an obvious pattern on, you won't need to do this because you'll be able to see quite clearly which is the right side and which is the wrong side. So then we need to decide where exactly we want our pockets on our item. So for me, I'm going to take where my waist is. I want them just a little bit lower than that. So I'm going to say about 2 inches lower. So I just want to mark on my dress where my waist is, just with my chalk pencil like this. If you don't have a chalk pencil, you can also just use a pin, but just be careful when you're getting the item on and off. So hopefully you can see here I've got a white mark where my waist is, and I'm just going to measure 2 inches below that for where I want my pocket. You can also just draw this directly on when you've got it on where you want your pocket. And then you want to transfer this into the inside of your fabric. So you can just put a pin there, turn it inside out, and then put my white mark here. And then I want the same distance on the other side. So I'm going to measure down from the top seam, the armhole. But if it was a skirt, you could also do from the waistband. So it's 25 centimetres on this side. So I'll go to my other armhole and go 25 centimetres down again. So then we're going to use our pattern pieces so that we can get the correct length of the pocket bag and make another mark at the bottom. And you just want to make sure you've got both sides of the seam because you're about to unpick this. You can even put a pin in both sides so you're extra sure where to look. And then just repeat on the same on the other side. And then what we need to do is unpick the length of this plus a bit extra on both sides, about an inch on either side, so that we can insert our own pocket bags into this space. So take your unpicker. So now I've unpicked both sides and I've got a hole here where my pocket is going to go with a little bit extra on each side. So then we take all of our pocket bag patterns. So we've got 2 sets, 1 for each side. And what we want to do is make sure that the pocket bag, this end is pointing down, and we're going to pin the right sides together. So with your right side facing down, just want to pin it between the gap that you've indicated. And then repeat that for all 4 pieces. And make sure you're not getting the underside of your fabric in, so just keep your hand in between there. And now we're ready to go to the sewing machine. So now we have our pockets pinned into our dress in the side seams. And the first thing that we're going to do is attach each half of the pocket bag to the side seam. So you can see on the dress that I started with, I have a seam allowance of about 1 centimetre. When I'm doing this first stitch to attach the pocket bag, I'm going to just go a couple of millimetres less than this. This is just so that when you finally press the pocket, it'll just sit just inside the seam and it won't be poking out. So on your machine, you'll have a 1 centimetre guide and you just want to go a few millimetres before that. I have my machine on a straight stitch, a mid-stitch length and just a normal tension. So then I'm just going to go in a straight line all the way down the edge, starting off with a little back tack to keep it secure. And then I'm going to repeat this process for all of the 4 sides. So once I've done a zigzag stitch all along the edge and I've come down to where I've unpicked my overlocking stitch from the finished garment originally. So now I'm going to repeat that on all my other edges. I'm going to take my pocket out and I need to press it so that it is lying flat. So you want to press with your iron on quite a hot temperature so that it can steam. But just be careful that if you're using a delicate fabric, make sure you always use a pressing cloth. So just a scrap bit of fabric that can take quite a high temperature on the iron. So now we're going to add a line of stitching to the pocket that's called an understitch. So this is only going to be seen from the inside, so it'll be right along this edge. But if you look on this side, you won't be able to see it. And the purpose of an understitch is just so that when the pocket is finished, you don't want the seam to roll outwards and see any of the pocket lining. So by adding a line of stitching just here, we make the underside a little bit heavier and it just will stay inside and will just give you a neater finish. So to do our understitch, we are just going to sew the pocket bag and then your seam allowance for both sides. So on this side we have just the main dress fabric and then everything else we have on this side, and we're going to stitch into it. So you want to get as close to your original line of stitching as possible, but without going over it. So you always want to stay to the pocket bag side of it. it's hard to see because of our thread colour, but we just have one stitch here that you can't see from this side at all. So we're just going to repeat that for all 4 places. So now that we've done our understitching, we're ready to close up our side seams, this time including the pocket bag. So that means that we're going to place the pocket bags together and then pin it in place. What we're going to do when we're sewing is follow our original stitch line on the side seams, and then when we reach the pocket, follow the same seam allowance but come all the way around the outside, back up again, and then closing it off again along the same stitch line that you previously unpicked here. So you can just pin that in place. And it's important at this point to line up to match the tops of your pocket to the bottom of your pocket on both sides. So now I have that all pinned in place. You want to repeat the same process on the other side, and then we can start sewing. So I've turned the dress back the right way out, and you can see here we've got our pocket. So now, importantly, I just need to give that a good press and repeat everything on the other side, and then we'll have finished. So here we have our finished dress, and it doesn't look too different from the outside, but now it has pockets.